A billionaire's perfect life takes a dark turn when a homeless boy delivers a chilling warning. Don't drive. Your wife cut the brakes. What happens next is a jaw-dropping tale of betrayal, courage, and unexpected twists you won't see coming. Before we jump in, let us know in the comments where you are listening from. And don't forget to subscribe for more narratives. Let's get started. Victor Elridge stood at the grand window of his Greenwich mansion, watching the golden light of the setting sun dance across his manicured lawn. Everything about the sprawling estate spoke of his success, a life built through tireless effort and unshakable determination. Yet amidst the grandeur, a quiet void lingered, unnoticed even by Victor himself. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Celeste's voice, soft and melodic, broke his thoughts. He turned to see his wife standing beside him, her elegance as striking as ever. Celeste looked out at the same view, her expression serene yet distant. "Isn't this paradise?" she asked, her voice carrying an almost wistful tone. Victor wrapped an arm around her, smiling warmly. "Yes, Celeste, this is everything I've ever dreamed of. For us." Celeste returned his smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Instead, there was a flicker of something he couldn't name, a shadow just beneath the surface. To Victor, their life was perfect, the culmination of his dreams. To Celeste, it was something else entirely. As Victor spoke of their future, enthusiastically planning an evening at her favorite restaurant, Celeste's nods came easily, as though rehearsed. Her polished poise hid the growing turmoil within, a yearning for something beyond this gilded life. When she excused herself to prepare, her reflection in the window remained, elegant, composed, and unreadable. Victor lingered at the window, toasting silently to the life he believed was unshakable. Upstairs, behind a closed door, Celeste leaned against the wall, her mask slipping. She glanced at her phone, its screen filled with messages and plans that, if discovered, could bring her perfect facade crashing down. "I've waited long enough," she whispered, her voice a shadow of the poised woman downstairs. Unaware of the storm gathering around him, Victor poured himself a bourbon, savoring what he believed was the serenity of a perfect life. But the cracks were already forming, and the paradise he had worked so hard to create was far more fragile than he knew. Later that evening, the dim glow of flickering streetlights illuminated the nearly deserted parking lot in Stamford. Celeste stepped out of her car, her heels clicking softly on the asphalt. She scanned the area, her polished calm masking the storm beneath. Near a rusted lamppost, Graham Elridge, Victor's younger brother, waited, his lean figure tense with anticipation. "Everything is ready," Celeste said, her voice low but steady. Graham's lips curled into a cold smile. "Tomorrow morning, the brakes will fail. It'll look like a tragic accident." Their shared ambition hung in the air like a dangerous current. Graham leaned against the post, studying her. "You're sure you can handle this?" Celeste's eyes were ice. "Victor won't suspect a thing. He trusts me." Graham nodded, his expression sharp. "Good. By this time tomorrow, everything changes." Neither noticed the faint movement behind a row of parked cars. Hidden in the shadows, Dorian Reyes, a 15-year-old homeless with sharp instincts and a restless heart, had stumbled upon the conversation while seeking shelter for the night. His heart was pounding as the voices he overheard replayed in his mind. "The brakes will fail. It'll look like an accident." He didn't know who Victor was, but he knew someone's life was in danger, and the weight of that knowledge pressed hard on his chest. As Celeste's sleek car pulled out of the lot, Dorian made a decision. Staying low, he followed at a distance, his sharp instincts guiding him. The streets shifted from the urban chaos he knew to sprawling trees and grand estates. These homes, with their towering gates and glittering lights, were worlds away from the rough edges of his life. When Celeste's car slowed and turned into an expansive estate, Dorian stopped at the edge of the shadows. He watched as the gates closed behind her, sealing the mansion in an aura of untouchable grandeur. The house loomed against the night sky, glowing with warmth that felt disturbingly false, given what he now knew. "I have to warn him," Dorian murmured, his breath quickening. He studied every detail, the gates, the long driveway, the mansion's towering facade, committing it to memory. Fear clawed at him as doubt crept in. Would they believe me? I'm just a street kid. They won't even listen. But beneath the fear burned a stronger resolve. He couldn't ignore what he'd heard, couldn't let an innocent man fall victim to such a cruel plan. With a final glance at the mansion, Dorian disappeared into the shadows, determined to act before it was too late. The next morning, Victor's luxury car idled at the gates. He adjusted his tie, his mind already on the day ahead, when a figure darted into view, waving frantically. Victor frowned, his irritation growing as the boy approached. "What do you think you're doing?" Victor demanded, rolling down the window. "Your brakes," the boy gasped, his voice trembling. "They've been tampered with. Your wife, your brother, they're planning to kill you." Victor stared, disbelief flashing in his eyes. "Do you have any idea what you're saying?" he asked, his voice sharp. "Please," the boy begged, his desperation cutting through Victor's skepticism. "Check the brakes. Just check them." Something in the boy's frantic tone made Victor pause. Reluctantly, he stepped out of the car and called for his mechanic. Dorian Reyes, as the boy had introduced himself, stood off to the side, his hands trembling as he watched. Minutes later, the mechanic's grim face confirmed the boy's warning. "Sir, the brake lines have been cut. It's deliberate." Victor's breath caught. The world seemed to tilt as the weight of betrayal hit him. Celeste, Graham, the people he trusted most? His eyes locked onto Dorian, who stood silently, his fear now mingled with relief. "You saved my life," Victor said, his voice quiet but firm. "They won't stop," Dorian replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "You have to act." Victor's jaw tightened. His perfect life was crumbling, but his resolve solidified. He nodded toward Dorian. "Stay close. We'll stop them, together." As they walked back to the mansion, Victor's world felt unfamiliar, yet the determination burning within him was undeniable. This was no longer about trust, it was about survival. Victor paced the grand living room, the weight of betrayal heavy on his shoulders. Across from him sat Dorian, the boy who had risked everything to save him. Despite his young age, Dorian's eyes held a determination that Victor couldn't ignore. "I owe you my life," Victor said, his voice steady but laced with pain. "And now I need your help." Dorian frowned. "What can I do? I'm just a kid." Victor shook his head. "You acted when no one else would. That makes you braver than most. Together, we'll make them think I'm dead." Dorian's eyes widened. "Fake your death?" Victor nodded. "It's the only way. They'll believe their plan worked and reveal their true intentions." The two worked quickly, crafting a daring scheme. Victor would stage a fatal car accident on the Taconic State Parkway, an isolated stretch where his car would be rigged to ignite and burn beyond recognition. Before executing the plan, Victor updated his will, ensuring Celeste would inherit nothing in the event of suspicious circumstance. "This will make them think they've won," Victor said coldly. "But it's far from over." Dorian listened intently, his resolve hardening. "And when they think you're gone?" "We'll watch them," Victor replied. "When they reveal their true selves, we'll strike." As night fell, the gravity of their plans settled over them. Victor placed a hand on Dorian's shoulder. "This isn't just about me anymore. Together, we'll end this." Dorian nodded, his quiet courage matching Victor's determination. Their dangerous plan was in motion, and there was no turning back. The Taconic State Parkway was silent under the cloak of night, the darkness pierced by a sudden explosion. From a ridge above, Victor and Dorian watched as flames engulfed Victor's luxury car, turning it into a fiery inferno. The heat and light blazed against the cold night, their faces illuminated by the burning wreckage. Victor's jaw tightened as he spoke, his voice low. "To them, I'm gone." Dorian nodded, his breath shallow. "They'll believe it. They have to." By morning, news of Victor Elridge's tragic death spread like wildfire. The headlines mourned the loss of a celebrated entrepreneur, while the world grieved for a man who seemingly had it all. At the mansion, Celeste played her part with calculated precision. Draped in black, she accepted condolences with trembling hands and tearful words. But in private, the mask fell. "It's done," she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "Soon everything he built will be ours." Graham smirked, raising a glass. "To us," he said, his tone as cold as their betrayal. Unseen, Victor and Dorian monitored it all from the shadows. The fire may have consumed Victor's car, but his resolve burned brighter. The game had begun, and the traitors were already playing into their hands. Days later, the lawyer's voice echoed through the solemn office, his tone deliberate as he read Victor's will. Celeste sat composed, her black dress exuding an air of practiced grief, while Graham leaned back, his false confidence barely concealing his impatience. "In the event of death by suspicious circumstances," the lawyer read, "the spouse and direct relatives are disinherited. Celeste's mask of control cracked, her hand gripping the armrest. Graham's voice wavered as he interjected, "This must be a mistake." Victor wouldn't. The door creaked open, cutting him off. Victor stepped in, alive and composed, with Dorian by his side. The room froze, Celeste's color drained, and Graham's jaw fell slack. "You thought you could kill me and take everything I've worked for?" Victor's voice was calm, but every word struck like a hammer. Celeste stammered, her composure slipping. "Victor, no excuses," he interrupted, his gaze cold and unrelenting. "You betrayed me, and now you'll face the consequences." The silence was suffocating, the weight of their betrayal hanging heavy in the air. Celeste and Graham sat paralyzed, their schemes unraveled as Victor stood before them, alive, resolute, and ready to deliver justice. Victor stood firm, his presence commanding the room as he laid out the evidence of their treachery. The weight of his words struck like thunder, each detail exposing the cold, calculated betrayal of Celeste and Graham. Their confident facades crumbled with every revelation, leaving only raw panic in their eyes. At Victor's subtle nod, the door opened, and two uniformed officers stepped inside. The sharp clink of handcuffs echoed in the room as the reality of their situation became undeniable. "No!" Celeste shrieked, her voice cracking as she twisted in a futile attempt to resist. "Victor, listen to me. I loved you. I did this for us." Victor's expression didn't waver. His voice was cold, stripped of any remaining sentiment. "You didn't do this for us, Celeste. You did it for greed, and you destroyed everything in the process." Tears streamed down her face, but her cries held no remorse, only desperation. The officers restrained her, her pleas growing more frantic as they led her toward the door. Graham, pale and shaking, tried to step forward. "Victor, wait. I was manipulated. This wasn't all me." "Stop." Victor's voice cut through the air, silencing his brother. His piercing gaze bore into Graham, the pain of betrayal still raw. "You were my brother, and you chose to stab me in the back. That's not family. You're no family of mine." Graham's head dropped, his excuses dying in his throat as the officers cuffed him. The two conspirators were led out of the room, their faces a mix of panic and humiliation. As the door closed behind them, a heavy silence settled. Victor exhaled deeply, the tension in his chest easing for the first time in weeks. The betrayal still stung, but in its place was a cold sense of justice. He stood in the now empty room, the shadows of his past beginning to lift. Despite the loss, Victor knew he had reclaimed his future, and no amount of greed or betrayal could take it from him again. The mansion felt different now, lighter, as though the shadows of betrayal had lifted. Victor stood in the living room, his gaze on Dorian, who sat hesitantly on the edge of the couch, his hands fidgeting nervously. "You saved my life," Victor said, his voice steady. "Now I want to change yours." Dorian blinked, unsure of what to say. "What do you mean?" Victor stepped closer. "This is your home now. No more running, no more surviving on scraps. You belong here." Overwhelmed, Dorian stammered, "I don't know how to be here." "You'll learn," Victor assured him, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. "And I'll teach you." In the weeks that followed, Victor became a mentor and father figure. He taught Dorian the values of leadership, responsibility, and integrity. The once silent mansion came alive with conversation, laughter, and purpose. One evening, as they sat by the fire after a lesson, Victor looked at Dorian. "You're my family now," he said firmly. "And family means loyalty and trust." Dorian nodded, his voice quiet but determined. "I won't let you down." Victor smiled, his belief in the boy unwavering. Together, they were building something new, a home, a future, and a bond forged through loyalty and resilience. Under Victor's guidance, Dorian grew into a confident young man, ready to inherit the empire. Their bond deepened, built on mutual respect and shared experiences. The mansion, once a symbol of betrayal, became a place of hope and renewal. Together, Victor and Dorian looked toward a future shaped by trust, resilience, and a determination to honor the lessons they'd learned. Victor and Dorian proved that family isn't defined by blood, but by loyalty and love. Their story stands as a testament to the power of redemption and the strength found in the most unexpected places. If you were in Victor's shoes, how would you handle discovering such deep betrayal from the people closest to you? Could you forgive, or would justice be your only priority? And what about Dorian's courage? He risked everything to save a man he didn't know. Would you have done the same in his position, or would fear have held you back? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear how you'd navigate these intense situations. Thank you for watching.